This show does not provide medical advice. If you're having a medical emergency, please call 911. Anything you hear here should be discussed with your primary health care provider. Hello and welcome to Everyone Dies, the radio show produced by Passionate World Talk Radio, whose goal it is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. I'm Marianne Matzo, and for the next 30 minutes, I am your host. So today, we're going to be talking about assisted death or assisted suicide or euthanasia. They tend to kind of all get wrapped up in a little bit different language, but essentially it comes down to helping somebody end their life prematurely before the natural course of life being over. You know, we've talked many times about hospice, how in hospice we don't hasten and we don't postpone death. And so you could look at assisted death or assisted suicide as hastening, giving a medication generally to end that person's life sooner than what the natural course could be. And when it's not uncommon for people who, especially in hospice, will see their family member, and even though the family member might be perfectly comfortable, people have flown in from lots of different places. They've said their goodbyes. They've done what they felt that they were there to do. And then they say, so how much longer is this going to be? And, you know, as a hospice nurse, we say, well, we don't hasten or postpone death. It'll happen when it happens. And some people will be like, well, why are they still here? Well, I don't know why they're still there. There's some reason that they must have, or a higher power, depending on what you think or how you view, has, that says they'll go when they're ready to go. But that doesn't always fit into our time schedules. That's an aspect of it. Another aspect is that people will say, well, they're really suffering, they're hurting. Can't you just give them something so that they will die? Well, that's a whole other question, isn't it? Because why are they suffering? What is that suffering coming from? Is it emotional suffering? Is it physical suffering? What do we need to do so that they're not suffering, so that they can be comfortable and die without, you know, having to move them along? Another aspect of the argument is that, you know, we euthanize our pets, you know, when they can't walk and go out to the bathroom anymore, or they're not able to eat anymore, or whatever it is. You know, we say, well, it is more humane to put them to sleep, to euthanize them, than to see them continually suffer. And so that's another part of the argument. So all of these we're going to be talking with in terms of these issues and these discussions on our podcast, everyonedies.org. It's EVERY, the number 1, dies.org, to hear more about the insides of these arguments. But today we're going to talk with Luke Piper, whose mom is in a care home. She's at the end of life, and he's agreed to talk with us about his thoughts about assisted death. So, Luke, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Very well. So Luke lives in the UK, and in the UK, it is not legal for assisted dying. It's just been passed not too long ago in New Zealand. We have, I don't know how many states now, 8, 10 states in the United States where it is legal to do that. But in the UK, it's not legal. What are your thoughts about that, Luke?
Well, I've always had quite a strong opinion that it should be legal, but never has it affected my personal life and my family's personal life as much as it is recently. So, yeah, I feel quite angry, really, to be honest, that this is not an option right now for my mum, who is, or has been till very recently, in a lot of pain and discomfort, and emotionally and you know, physically, until they've just put a morphine driver into her, so she's getting drugs pumped into her, you know, 24/7, which is basically sedating her that much that we visit twice a day, me and my father and other family, and it's basically sedating her to the point where she has no real idea that what's happening, to be honest. So she's comfortable, but she's just permanently asleep, but not permanently asleep as she would wish to be, if that makes sense.
It does. So your mom had been pretty well until recently. Tell us, if you want, what happened.
Yeah, sure. So it was probably about 6 months ago. My mum, we realised that she was starting to. It wasn't even looking from the outside in. You wouldn't have even known that she was poorly. To be honest, it was just she wasn't quite herself. So basically, she went to the doctors. We felt, I sort of said you should really go to the doctors. Mum was saying not quite right. So long story short, she went to the doctors. They messed about a bit with blood tests and all sorts of standard things. And in this period of time, which was about 4 weeks, her health seemed to decline quite quickly. So we got her an emergency day in hospital to have MRI scans, CT scans, and you name it, she had it. And at the end of that day, she was told that she had a primary cancerous tumour in her brain and also a primary cancerous tumour in her lung. So 2 weeks after that, we went for the official prognosis, and unfortunately, she was told that she had weeks, if not a couple of months at best, to live. So my father cared for my mum's 75, by the way, and my father's 80. Both up until that point very fit and healthy for their age. So my father looked after my mum at home, in their own home, for quite a few weeks, until it just got to the point where he just couldn't cope anymore because her health was declining rapidly every day. So 1 month ago, pretty much to the day, she went into a care home quite local to us. It's 10 minutes up the road from where we live, thank goodness. And again, with all the COVID scenario at the moment, I'm sure you realise with care homes and stuff, visiting is an absolute nightmare, or can certainly be an absolute nightmare for lots of families. Luckily, my mum's got a room that has direct access from outside, so we don't have to go in through any part of the care home. We can just access her room alone from the outside in. So we can actually visit her whenever we like, how often we like, for as long as we like, which is, if there is a positive, that's that one right there. So that's really my mum's story. She can't now, literally days after she went into the care home, she stopped being able to communicate at all. So she can't really speak. She can't even say yes or no now. She's having to be, she's completely bedridden. She's having to be fed, and even that, her swallowing is declining. She can't really swallow properly, so they're having to feed her like a syrup type liquid to hydrate her and get some sort of vitamins and protein into her. So yeah, it's an absolute living nightmare at the moment. And as I say, before they put the driver into her for the drugs being pumped 24/7, she was in a hell of a lot of pain.
Mm-hmm. So what? And I'm a nurse practitioner. I've worked with families in palliative care and hospice care. So let me ask you, what is the issue for you right now? It doesn't sound like she's in pain.
Well, the issue is when she was in pain, obviously that was an issue. But right now, it's her dignity is completely gone. She has, she's having to be changed like it sounds awful, but like a baby, I guess. She can't get out of bed, she can't do anything herself, so everything has got to be done for her. And I know that my mum would absolutely hate every second of that. She's a very proud, sort of old-fashioned, traditional sort of English lady. She would absolutely hate every second of someone having to do that for her. And to the point where when we got the prognosis, she actually had to sign a do not resuscitate form. Well, she didn't have to, but she was asked would she like to, and she said yes. And I know, because I've spoken to her, that she would have, if she had the choice, she would have also signed a form to say, please, end my life when I get to such a point, which would have been quite shortly after signing that do not resuscitate form, to be honest. So, my mum's commented when she was able to speak, when she was still at home, a few times to me and my dad and my sister, etc., that, I just would like this all to be over with now. And she was almost apologising to us as a family for putting us through it, and which is horrendous to hear.
Yes.
But I just know that if she had the choice, she would have absolutely opted to humanely end her own life if it was an option.
So, Luke, tell me this. You said that they're feeding her and giving her fluids and that kind of thing. I don't know the rules and laws in the UK, but are they required to do that, or could you stop those?
I don't know the actual rules around it, to be honest, but I guess I've spoken actually to the Macmillan nurse today about it, and she said nothing that they're doing in the care home is actually going to lengthen or shorten my mum's life. There's nothing that's going to actually help her as such. It's all a case of keeping her as comfortable as possible. So obviously if she's taken in no fluid at all or no moisture into her mouth, that's not keeping her comfortable, because obviously everybody knows when you get really, really thirsty, the more thirsty you get, the more sort of dry and horrible your mouth feels. So
Luke, can I talk to you a little bit about that?
Sure. Because
you said everybody knows that if you don't do this, this is going to happen. So, and actually we have a podcast for our listeners and perhaps for you and your family afterwards about artificial food and fluids. So anything your mom sits up and takes and drinks is a normal way of taking in fluids. I assume that's, you eat and drink the same way that I do, put it in your mouth, chew it up, swallow it, But your mom's not doing that. She's being fed. She's being given hydration. And not if you as a family said, okay, this is one thing that we can control, we can stop this. Now, stopping food and fluids with good mouth care, she's not going to be uncomfortable. She's not going to feel hunger. You and I, if we didn't eat, I don't know about you, I get really cranky and I feel hunger. I feel thirst. People who are at the end of life, people who are dying, and Luke, your mom is really at the end of her life. She's dying. She's not doesn't sound like she's in an active stage, but she very well could be. I mean, I'm not there to assess her. But if you don't put in additional fluids and foods, your body, what it'll do is it'll go into what's called a ketotic state. So it's ketosis. And with that, at the end of life, people were built to release natural opioids. So just like the morphine pump is a opioid, your body will produce natural opioids to keep us comfortable. And if people who can talk, who choose, I don't want any artificial food and fluids, I don't want that, they don't feel hungry, they don't feel thirsty. If the mouth is dry, you just do good mouth care, because giving food and fluids doesn't keep that from happening. So good mouth care, and she's not going to have negative symptoms or be uncomfortable. So if you were to stop that intervention and feeding her and giving her all, stuff, I don't know if do they have an IV in her?
So what's that, sorry?
Do they have an IV in her?
What, like a drip, you mean?
Yes.
No.
Okay. So stopping saying, nothing more by mouth lets her body not have to deal with whatever, is going in. It makes her bladder not have to produce urine. It helps those natural opioids come. And people who are at the very end stage, like your mom, can last like 4 to 5 days up till 3 weeks. Don't ask me how they last 3 weeks, but people can last like about up to 3 weeks not eating and drinking. People who are at the end of life. I'm not talking about people who are perfectly healthy. That's not who we're talking about. Only, we're talking about people who are dying. And so when you're saying her dignity is gone, you can look at, so what are we doing for her that would not be necessary? Another thing would be, like, if she's on, I don't know if she's on cardiac medicines or anything else, you can also stop those. Those things, any medication other than meds to manage her pain, or if she became agitated or something like that, anything else could be stopped, because those are also can prolong a person's life. So we don't have to actively inject somebody with a medicine to kill them. We talk about dignity. You're looking at dignity, and I understand that with your mom in terms of, I can remember my sister was very, very sick. I said, "Where's the line in the sand?" And she said, "When someone has to wipe my ass." And I said, "Okay." That gave me a good place. Some people's line in the sand is if I can't go to the store, but hers, that's where hers was. And so you say, well, this was her line in the sand. This was where she didn't want to be. If the person's not able to talk to you, like your mom's not able to say, here's what I want, here's what I don't want, then you say, okay, I know she wouldn't want this. We can keep her comfortable, get rid of everything else, like all of her meds, hydration, nutrition, all of that, and just let her be comfortable and let her go. It's called, Luke, allowing natural death. And the reason there's this whole ethical thing about assisting a death is because human beings, by viewpoint, are different than dogs or cats. We euthanize dogs and cats, but people were different. People are of a higher, place along the food chain. If you're religious, you'd say people are made in the image of God. They don't say dogs are made in the image of God. People are made in the image of God. And therefore, you respect that life, right? So, but there is nothing that says you have to drink, you have to eat, you have to take all your medicine. So she'll go when she's ready to go, but you can remove the barriers for her to go. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something, if you hadn't have said that I wouldn't even dream of, because obviously I'm not from a medical background, so my immediate sort of view and reaction to that would be, well, if she's, I did say it to the lady at the care home. I said, is Mum drinking anything? Because her mouth is going to be so dry, it's going to be awful for her, But actually, what you've just explained, it's not going to be, because the body's going to take care of that itself. So that's a really interesting point, to be fair.
And if her mouth gets dry, generally people's mouths will get dry because they're mouth breathing, something like that. But you just do good mouth care. Get some chapstick or some sort of, kind of clear gloss to keep the mouth moisturized. They even, if it got really dry for some reason, they even have like a fake moisture spray. You can just spray it in, and it's like spray spit. I don't know, that sounds really gross, but what it does is it keeps the mouth hydrated, but it's sure. It's not contributing.
Keeping the body hydrated. It's keeping the mouth hydrated.
Right. So if it got really bad, that's always an option. But generally, good mouth care and some moisture stuff on the lips is really all. I've worked as a hospice nurse. I've been, and I've had this discussion with people because it's natural to say, I know what I feel like if I don't eat. I don't want to do that to my mom. And we also have a thing about nurturing. The first thing, when a woman has her baby is, the baby goes to the breast. The first thing we do is to nurture that child. And, if I want to say, Luke, I really care about you. Here's a pan of muffins, I'm going to nurture you that way. And so to think about, well, I can't not nurture my mom that way. And on the other hand, you say, well, but she really doesn't want to be alive. Well, there are things you can do to help her allow her natural death to come perhaps a little sooner than it would if you kept giving her medicine. Like, is she taking any other medicine besides the morphine?
No, there's the morphine. There's another 2 medicines. One I know is for the secretion on her chest because it's really, again, horrendous to listen to, and I'm sure it feels horrendous. So it's
actually,
really,
can I interrupt you there? And I know
sure.
While you're saying that, the reality of those secretions that you're listening to is what you're hearing is like the secretions, because she's not moving, are kind of pooling in the back of her throat. And as her air moves over those secretions, you're hearing it rattle. So for her, if she wasn't on the morphine, she'd say to you, Luke, I'm fine. It's not bothering me. But for us to listen to, it's like, holy Lord, what is that? So they're giving her Levzin or something that's going to just dry up those secretions. So that's what that's about. But again, if we weren't putting in food and fluids, she wouldn't have the extra secretions. She wouldn't be making that noise, and maybe she wouldn't need the Levzin either. You see how it's all connected?
Sorry, say that again.
I said, do you see how it's all connected?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. It's if I had a choice, which you're giving me more choice by this conversation, I would absolutely exercise the right to use those choices for my mum, without a doubt. Because I just know that she doesn't want to be here.
Right. So you were saying she's on 2 medicine. One was for the secretions. What's the other one she's on?
I'm not sure, to be honest, what that is. I know it's the morphine and this thing that's for the secretions, but I'm not sure what the other thing is, to be perfectly honest.
Well, it'd be a good question to ask, and if it's something related to her heart or her diabetes or, I don't know, whatever else, if it's not a palliative drug, if it's not to manage symptoms, then you can think about, does her body really need to be spending its time metabolizing that?
Sure.
And, so if you and your family say, well, okay, we're not going to do any of that oral stuff, and we're not going to put a feeding tube in and no IVs, like I said, the body in its natural state, it can be anywhere from like 3 days to 3 weeks for the body to completely shut itself down. Part of that has to do with how healthy your mom's body was in the first place. But the other side of it, though, Luke, is to think about, your mom wouldn't be very pleased that people are attending to her physical needs. But I would guess that they're attending to her physical needs in a dignified and respectful way. But she's also getting her family together with her. You're saying twice a day you're going. Maybe it's not for her at all, Luke. Maybe it's for you and your dad. Maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. I mean, when she was, let's say, in a more conscious state, but she was, riding around in pain, It was horrendous to go and see this. And you just felt so helpless, and it was just a horrible experience, to have to watch somebody that you love that much going through hell, basically. Now, obviously, we're going purely and simply because we love my mum, and hopefully she can hear our voices and that she gets some sort of comfort from that. We really don't know. We of course, we're not inside her head, so we don't even know, can she actually hear us? We assume she probably can because she'll squeeze your hand and, sort of in certain places when you're talking to her, saying certain things, she'll squeeze your hand. That's about as much as you get out of my mum now. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're going because we want her to know, if at all possible, that we're there and we haven't abandoned her. Because there is a massive feeling of abandonment when you walk out of that care home and leave your loved one laying there. You feel I do anyway. I feel every time that I'm abandoning my own mum. It's torture, really. But yeah, I think the reason why we're going is not because we think that miraculously she might wake up and be full of the joys of spring. It's purely and simply because we believe that she can hear us, and hopefully, because she knows how much we love her, she'll take some sort of satisfaction and relaxant from hearing our voices. But that's it. That is, there's nothing more than that reason, I guess, for visiting.
But what I'm saying, though, Luke, is that perhaps that time that you're spending with your dad is part of the reason that she's still there. Now, I know that sounds a little convoluted, but there are secondary benefits in terms of going and being with her. One, of course, is the comfort and all those things that you described, but maybe, I don't know if you're picking up your dad, if you're going to have dinner afterwards, or that time that you're spending with your dad and she maybe on a level knows that you are, is wonderfully satisfying. And maybe there's healing. There's always can always be tough situations between sons and their dads. Maybe there's healing that's going on there that you're maybe not even aware about. But people stay here. I've seen people stay where you say, how the heck are they holding on? But they hold on till they get to that point where it's what they want. Like sometimes it's somebody coming in from, another state or another country, and that son, that daughter, whatever, gets there, and then in an hour that person's dead. And you say, where does that will come from? Maybe there's something that she's wanting or needing, We don't know.
Yeah.
Which is why we don't hasten somebody's death, because we don't know when that right time is.
Sure. I think the bottom line would be for me is if my mum, when she was able to speak properly, and able to be consequent and have that conversation, and knowing that she was 100% mentally stable to make that decision, she could have, at that point, signed some sort of legal document to say, I'm giving my permission to be euthanized or assisted death, or whatever terminology you want to use. When I get to this point, as you said, your sister said, well, I can't wipe my own arse. Please switch me off, basically. I know that my mum would have signed that form without a shadow of a doubt, and she wasn't given that opportunity. So therefore has had all of this suffering, and so has all her family, which she would hate the fact that me and I'm guessing, apart from us feeling that we're talking to my mum and she can still hear us, would my mum really like the fact that we're there twice a day, every day, sitting beside her bed? Probably not, to be honest. because she'd be thinking, just get on with your lives, because she's not able to tell us that because she can't speak. So again, it's that you feel torn, you feel abandonment, but you also feel torn. Am I even doing the right thing? As you say, is it just for me, or is it actually paying her any benefit?
But it's something that you'll never know, Luke. But,
exactly.
but when I was in grad school, I did some research with people who had terminal illnesses and talking about it at the age of Kevorkian and talking about assisted death, because people, I don't know if you're old enough to remember Kevorkian and all of that, but people would say, oh man, if I ever get that bad, just take me in the field and shoot me. Very cavalier. Oh, just take me out and shoot me. I don't want to live like that. But the research that we were doing at University of Massachusetts in Boston was to go and talk to people who had given a terminal diagnosis and to find out, do they really want to go out in the field and get shot, shoot themselves. And what they said, every one of them, Luke, said getting that diagnosis made their life so much more precious. They didn't want to go out and end their life because there were so very few days that they had left, and they wanted everyone. And if you even look at the research, at least in the United States, that's what I'm familiar with, is the states that allow assisted death, people will go through the process and get the pills and do everything, but the number who actually follow through on it is very small for the same reason.
Yeah,
Life becomes much more precious when you know you're dying.
I can quite believe that, and I would imagine. I have actually, unfortunately, a very good friend of mine who's I'm 44, he's 42. I don't know, it's a completely different type of cancer, but he's basically only got months to live, but he's still able-bodied. He's able to do everything for himself. I mean, he has some pretty terrible days where he is, he can't really get out of bed, but he can still, his bodily functions are all still there. He can still, he's got support, he can still sort of walk and talk and go and do stuff with his family. So, but he does know he's dying. Now, in that scenario, I totally agree with what you said. Life is precious, and he lives every single minute of every single day to the max because he can. And until, hopefully, he will be able to do that until the day sadly comes that he can't anymore. But with my mum's situation, she hasn't got any quality of life. And at that point, I think the numbers of people who go through with it would probably go up quite dramatically when they get to that point.
Well, that would be probably a good thing, to do a little reading about, because and I don't want to sound like I'm against assisted suicide or for assisted suicide. What I learned from my dissertation about assisted suicide is that when people's symptoms are well managed, they're going to be less likely to want assisted suicide. So then, which is how I got into palliative care and hospice care, was, all right, so let's teach nurses how to better do that, because I'm a nurse, and learn how to manage symptoms.
Sure.
And then in my retirement, this is what I'm doing, is doing public education, so that right now you and your family are feeling pretty powerless in terms of watching what's going on with mom. But there are some things that you can do. You can tell them, if it's consistent with your values, don't give her anything else, to eat or drink. You can, put the lotion, the lip stuff on her lips. You can bring in music to play to her. We always tell people that hearing is the last symptom to go. So people in the family can, there's sort of 5 things that should happen at the end to say, thank you, I love you, I will miss you, please forgive me, and I forgive you. And that is sort of, then you fill in the blanks about what you want to be forgiven for or what you need to forgive her for. And everybody should have that quiet opportunity with her to say that and to do that so that your hearts feel at peace, her heart can feel at peace. And who knows? You know, like I said, sometimes people are waiting for somebody to come in from out of town. Sometimes they're waiting for the priest. Sometimes they're waiting to hear I love you or to hear I forgive you. We don't, that's the thing, we don't know. But we can do those things, and she'll go when she's ready. And maybe the law will change and people will choose to end their life, you know, with a terminal illness prematurely. But I also think in being with families at the end of life is that there's something very profound in those last days and last weeks of life.
Sure, it is. Sorry, excuse me. It's yeah, I can't disagree with anything you're saying. It's we don't know. I guess that's a bit that's sort of killing us is the fact that we don't really know what is. You know, it's my birthday on Friday, for example, and it crosses my mind all the time. Is she holding on for my birthday? You know, does she even know it's my birthday? I don't know because I can't ask her that. I can't. Well, I could ask her, but I'm not going to get a response.
Well, she might squeeze your hand. You said that she's still squeezing your hand. You know, you don't know. You don't know. Yeah. I've had so many people who've, you know, those 5 things I just told you about, and they would go in and they would talk about those things. And I've had so many family members come back and say, I told her I was sorry about this, this, and this, and she cried. You know, tears came out of her eyes. You know, is that directly related to what you said? I don't know, but I don't know that it's not.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I appreciate you talking to me, and I hope you'll reach out and let me know if you have other questions and let me know how your mom is doing. And perhaps in a couple of months, maybe we should get together again and see if your thoughts, if they've changed and how they changed, or if they stayed the same and why you think they have. Maybe it'd be worthwhile for you and for our listeners to hear what happened. What do you think?
Sure, I'm more than happy to do that. And to be honest, it's been almost like therapy talking to you, so thank you very much.
I'll send you a bill, Luke.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you for being with me, and thank you to our listeners for spending time with me doing our show, Everyone Dies. You can read our blogs and listen to our other podcasts at everyonedies.org. That's EDERY, the number 1, dies.org. Thank you to our producer, Jeannie White, and our CEO, Lillian Caldwell. We produce a new show every Wednesday to answer your questions related to life-threatening illness, dying, and death. Remember, you can listen to A Passionate World Talk Radio on Spreaker and our shows wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have a topic you'd like to discuss on our show, please email me, Marianne, at everyonedies.org. That's MARIANNE at everyonedies.org. EDERY, the number 1, dies.org. I hope that you live your best life every day, and remember, every day is a gift. Thank you for listening.